Hello everyone, thank you for joining me today. As you may know, Japan has a unique and highly regulated work culture. One key area that often raises questions is how overtime work and premium wages handled under Japanese labor law. It can get a bit tricky, but don't worry, I'm here to make it simple and practical for you. Let's get started and break down Japanese labor law step by step. So here's today's agenda. We cover how overtime work and premium wages are handled under Japanese labor law. I'll start by talking about the definition of overtime work in Japan and then move on to give an overall view of overtime pay rates. In Japan, there are three main situations where companies must provide premium pay. One, when working hours exceed 8 hours a day or 40 hours a week. 2. When working on a statutory day of designated by the company. 3. When working during nighttime hours, typically from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. It's important to know that there are some exceptions to these rules. Premium pay may not apply under special working arrangements. We'll go over these exceptions in more detail in a future session. So, what does exceeding 8 hours a day or 40 hours a week actually mean? First, it's important to know that these hours refer to actual working hours, not including lunch breaks. If someone works from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. with a 1-hour lunch break, their total working time is 8 hours. Let's take a look at an example of weekly working hours. Some companies set their standard working hours at 7 hours per day. However, even if employees work beyond 7 hours a day, as long as it doesn't exceed 8 hours, it's not considered legal overtime. In that case, the company would pay for the additional hour, but whether or not to pay an overtime premium is entirely up to the company. For example, if an employee contracted to work 7 hours a day works 8 hours, the monthly salary only covers the company's standard working hours, which is up to 7 hours. Therefore, the company is required to pay the regular wage for the additional work. However, whether or not to pay an increased rate for the additional hour is left to the company's discretion. On the other hand, working beyond 8 hours a day, the time shown in red on the slide, counts as legal overtime, meaning the company must pay a 25% overtime premium, or in other words, 125% of the regular wage. Now, let's take a different scenario. Suppose an employee works 7 hours a day, 6 days a week. In this case, their total working time for the week would be 42 hours. Since the legal limit is 40 hours per week, the additional 2 hours would be considered overtime and would require premium pay. So, whenever someone works more than 8 hours a day or 40 hours a week, it counts as overtime and an additional pay rate must be applied according to labor laws. Let's move on to work on a day off. In Japan, most companies offer 2 days off per week, but only one is legally designated as a statutory day off. If an employee works on this day, they are entitled to a 35% premium rate. Let's say a company sets Sunday as their statutory day off. The slide here shows an example where an employee works 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. Here's an important point to remember. Only Sunday counts as statutory day off, while Saturday does not. So for the work week, we first check if the employee works more than 8 hours per day or 40 hours per week, excluding Sunday. In this example, by Friday, the employee has already worked 40 hours, so all 8 hours on Saturday are counted as overtime and require a 25% overtime premium. However, Saturday is not considered a statutory day off, so the 35% premium for day of work does not apply. On the other hand, if the employee works on Sunday, which is the statutory day off, it counts as day of work and a 35% premium is required. So let's recap the concepts of overtime and day of work. Under Japan's Labor Standard Act, Statutory leave doesn't mean any 2 days off per week. It specifically refers to the one statutory day off designated by the company. When managing working hours, work on the statutory leave and overtime hours are tracked separately. This slide shows statutory leave work on the right and overtime hours on the left. Overtime includes hours beyond 8 hours per day or 40 hours per week, excluding statutory day off. Think of these as two separate categories, one for overtime and one for day work. For overtime hours, the premium is 25% up to 60 hours per month. However, once overtime exceeds 60 hours in a month, the premium jumps to 50%, meaning employees must be paid 1.5 times their regular rate for those hours. Lastly, let's talk about night work. In Japan, night work generally refers to the hours between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m., with some exceptions for certain regions. If someone works during this time, they're entitled to an additional 25% pay premium. Finally, let's recap the key premium rates you need to know to comply with Japan's labor laws. As mentioned earlier, an overtime premium of 25% applies when employees work more than 8 hours per day or 40 hours per week. If the total overtime exceeds 60 hours in a month, this premium rate increases to 50%. The premium rate for day of work is 35%. Here, day off refers not to any company-designated day off, but specifically to the statutory day off required by law, which is 1 day off per week. Please note that even if an employee works more than 8 hours on the statutory day off, no additional overtime premium is required. This is because overtime work and day of work are managed separately. Regarding night work, late night premium of 25% is added on the top of the wages for regular work, overtime work, or day of work performed during nighttime hours. Lastly, the additional premium rates are shown as follows. So, thank you for watching. I hope this breakdown of overtime premium helped clarify how different rates apply in various situations. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more helpful content, and see you next time.